The fluorescent lights in the glass conference room make everything feel sterile, clinical, like I'm being dissected rather than reviewed. Trent Lawson, my manager for the past 18 months, leans back in his leather chair with that signature smirk I've learned to hate. I've just asked about the raise he promised me 4 months ago, the one he said was guaranteed after I carried out the entire rebranding campaign that landed us 3 major clients. He laughs. Actually laughs, loud enough that the marketing team outside can probably hear through the glass walls. A raise? Haley, come on. For what exactly? My face flushes hot. He proceeds to list my supposed mistakes, the campaign where he changed my strategy last minute, then blamed me when the client was confused. The presentation where he deleted my slides and claimed I forgot to include key metrics. The email chain where he contradicted my recommendations, then took credit when his approach failed and mine would have worked. Around the table, my colleagues, people I've worked alongside for years, stare at their laptops, refusing to meet my eyes. Trent leans forward, his smile widening like he's enjoying this. Honestly, you're lucky to even have a job right now. I'd be grateful if I were you. The room goes silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. My throat tightens. I nod slowly, force my face into something neutral, and stand up. I walk out with my head high, but inside, something fundamental shifts. I'm done asking for fairness from people who have no intention of giving it. My name is Haley Brooks, and I'm 31 years old. For 5 years, I poured my soul into Ultravision Media, a mid-sized marketing agency in Denver. I loved my job once, loved the creative freedom, the collaborative energy, the feeling of building campaigns that actually mattered to real businesses with real stories. Then my manager, Patricia, retired. She'd been my mentor, my advocate, the person who saw my potential and pushed me to grow. When she left, everything changed. Trent Lawson took over. He was 42, had an MBA from a school he mentioned constantly, and came from a corporate background where efficiency meant cutting anything that didn't immediately show ROI, including people's dignity. He was all charm upward and cruelty downward. He'd laugh at the CEO's jokes, volunteer for high-visibility projects, and schmooze with clients over expensive lunches. But behind closed doors, he systematically tore down anyone he perceived as a threat. For some reason I still don't fully understand, that included me. Maybe because I was good at my job. Maybe because I didn't laugh at his inappropriate jokes or validate his ego. Maybe because I was a woman who didn't apologize for taking up space. Whatever the reason, I became his favorite target. He called it constructive feedback. I called it death by 1,000 cuts. And after that meeting, sitting in my car in the parking garage with tears I refused to let fall, I made a decision. I would never beg this man for my worth again. The abuse didn't start with that meeting. It started the day Trent arrived. At first, it was subtle. He'd rewrite my emails before forwarding them to clients, then tell me my communication style needed work. He'd interrupt me in meetings to clarify what I'd just said, repeating my exact words, but taking credit for the idea. He'd schedule important strategy sessions when I had doctor's appointments, then criticize me for being out of the loop. My confidence started eroding like sandstone under constant water. I'd second-guess every email before sending it. I'd practice what I'd say in meetings, then stay silent when he inevitably talked over me. I started wondering if maybe he was right, maybe I wasn't as good as I thought. One afternoon, after he publicly dismissed my campaign concept as amateurish, only to present a barely modified version of it the next week as his own, I went to HR. The HR representative, a tired-looking woman named Felicia, listened sympathetically. Then she handed me a blank notebook. "Document everything," she said. "Dates, times, witnesses, what was said. If this escalates, we'll need evidence. If this escalates." As if it hadn't already escalated. As if being humiliated daily wasn't enough. I took the notebook home and started a digital folder instead. I called it insurance. By the time I filled that folder with screenshots, emails, and recorded conversations, I wasn't scared anymore. I was strategic. For months before the conference room humiliation, I sat in this same office for my mid-year review. But that day, Patricia's replacement was trying to make a good impression. Trent smiled warmly and slid a printed performance review across the desk. Scores of 4 and 5 out of 5. Comments like exceptional creativity, strong client relationships, consistently exceeds expectations. Haley, you're one of my strongest team members, he said, and I actually believed he meant it. I'm recommending you for a raise, probably around 15%. Should go through after Q2 results come in. 15%. That would mean finally being able to save for a house instead of renting forever. It would mean financial security. Respect. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful. I really appreciate that. You've earned it, he replied. So I kept earning it. I stayed late finishing the rebrand campaign that would become Ultravision's biggest win that quarter. I mentored junior designers. I took on extra client meetings when other team members were overwhelmed. I made Trent look brilliant. Q2 came and went. My raise didn't. When I finally worked up the courage to ask, he waved his hand dismissively. Budget cuts. You understand. Probably next quarter. Then I learned from Marcus, a junior designer who'd started 6 months after me, that he'd just gotten promoted. Marcus, who was talented but inexperienced, who'd worked on exactly 3 campaigns compared to my dozens, who was male, friendly, and never challenged Trent's decisions. The betrayal didn't just hurt. It clarified everything. That night, I went home and opened a blank Google document. At the top, I typed, Plan B. I spent that weekend researching how to start an LLC, how to build a portfolio website, how to price freelance services, how to find clients without violating any non-compete agreements. I was good at branding, visual identity, storytelling, helping businesses figure out who they were and how to communicate it. Skills I'd been giving away to Ultravision for years while Trent took credit and diminished my contributions. What if I just did it for myself? The idea felt dangerous and thrilling, like I was stealing back pieces of myself that had been taken without permission. I decided to start a freelance side business under a neutral name with no connection to me personally. Something clean, professional, forgettable enough not to trigger Trent's radar. North Peak Creative. I registered the LLC on Sunday night. Built a simple website using a template. Opened a separate bank account. Created social media profiles with stock photos and generic copy. No face, no personal brand, just competent, reliable design work. I told absolutely no one. Not my coworkers, not my friends, barely even admitted it to myself. It felt like planting a seed in secret, unsure if anything would grow but hoping desperately that it would. By Monday morning, North Peak Creative existed. And Trent Lawson had no idea his biggest mistake was just beginning. 2 weeks after launching North Peak, I finished the campaign I'm most proud of in my entire career. A sustainable lifestyle brand called Terraform Goods hired Ultravision to refresh their visual identity. I spent 6 weeks on it, researching their values, interviewing their founders, crafting a brand story that felt authentic and compelling. The logo I designed was simple but meaningful. A circle of leaves forming a compass, representing guidance towards sustainable living. I presented it to Trent first, as required. He nodded absently, changed 2 minor colors, and scheduled the client presentation. The clients loved it. Called it exactly what we envisioned. Signed a year-long contract on the spot. 3 days later, Trent presented the campaign to Ultravision's CEO in the monthly leadership meeting. I waited for him to mention my name, to acknowledge the work. He didn't. This rebrand represents the strategic direction I've been pushing the team toward, he said smoothly. Clean, purposeful, story-driven. I'm proud of what we accomplished. We. Not me. We. I confronted him after the meeting, my hands shaking. That was my campaign. My concept, my design, my strategy. You didn't even mention my name. He looked at me like I'd said something amusing. Haley, this is how the game works. You do the execution, I provide the strategic vision and leadership. Team effort. You'll understand when you've been here longer. Then he smiled and said the word that broke something fundamental inside me. Don't worry, sweetheart. Your contribution is valued. Sweetheart. That night, I logged into Ultravision's shared drive and downloaded every single file I'd ever created. Every campaign, every presentation, every piece of original work. I saved them to an external hard drive, organized by date and project. If he wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules and rewrite them entirely. North Peak Creative's first real client came through a friend of a friend, a small eco-friendly skincare company called Bloom Botanicals. They had a great product but terrible branding, clip art logo, inconsistent colors, a website that looked like it was built in 2008. The owner, Steph, reached out hesitantly. "I can't afford a big agency, but I saw your portfolio and I love your aesthetic. Any chance you could help?" I quoted her a price that was fair but not corporate, about a third of what Ultravision would charge. She accepted immediately. I worked on it at night after coming home from Ultravision, fueled by coffee and spite. I redesigned their logo, a minimalist botanical illustration that felt modern and organic. Created a color palette of soft greens and creams. Built them a clean, mobile-friendly website. Developed social media templates they could use themselves. It took 3 weeks of midnight work sessions, but when I sent the final files, Steph cried. "This is everything I dreamed of but didn't think I could afford. Thank you." A week later, a local sustainability blog featured Bloom Botanicals' rebrand. The post went mildly viral in Denver's small business community. My inbox started getting inquiries. For the first time in months, I felt competent again. Valued. Like my work actually mattered to someone. Every thank you email from my North Peak clients felt like oxygen after drowning. And then one of Ultravision's clients reached out to me. The email came on a Tuesday morning, sent to North Peak Creative's contact form. "Hi, we're currently working with Ultravision Media, but frankly aren't happy with the responsiveness or creativity. We're considering switching agencies. Would you be available for a consultation?" I recognized the company immediately, Heritage Hotels, a boutique hotel chain with 6 properties across Colorado. They were one of Trent's accounts, one he constantly bragged about during team meetings. My stomach dropped. This was a direct conflict of interest. Even though North Peak was technically a separate business and I wasn't violating any non-compete clause, ethically this felt like crossing a line. I stared at the email for 10 minutes, my cursor hovering over the reply button. Then I wrote back, "Thank you for reaching out. Unfortunately, I have a conflict that prevents me from taking on your project. I'd recommend reaching out to competitor agency. Best of luck with your rebrand." I hit send and immediately felt relieved. And terrified. And vindicated. Because the message was clear, Ultravision's clients preferred my work over Trent's entire department. They were actively seeking me out, even without knowing who I was. It wasn't luck. It was proof I'd been right all along. The monthly all-hands meeting happened every first Friday. 90 people crammed into the main conference space, the CEO droning through financial updates and team announcements, while everyone secretly checked their phones. This month, Trent was presenting our department's quarterly results. He clicked through slides highlighting successful campaigns, revenue growth, client retention. When he got to the Terraform Goods rebrand, my rebrand, he spent 3 full minutes talking about his strategic vision. Then, near the end of his presentation, he paused and smiled. Of course, not every project goes smoothly. We've had some performance concerns on the team that we're actively addressing. It's important to maintain high standards, even when that means having difficult conversations. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. His eyes flicked toward me for a fraction of a second, and a few people in the room followed his gaze. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Someone whispered something I couldn't hear. My face burned so hot I thought I might pass out. I kept my expression perfectly neutral, but my nails dug into my palms so hard they left crescent-shaped marks that lasted for hours. After the meeting, a coworker named Kayla awkwardly touched my shoulder. "Don't take it personally. That's just Trent being Trent." But it was personal. It was deliberately, calculatedly personal. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened my laptop. Then I updated my North Peak creative portfolio with the Bloom Botanicals rebrand and sent proposals to 3 potential clients. He thought I'd crumble. I was just getting started. The cracks in Trent's facade started showing in small ways. I overheard him on the phone with a client, his voice tight and defensive. We're experiencing some internal transitions, but I assure you the quality of work won't be affected. The client must have pushed back because his next words were sharper. If you're not satisfied with our service, we can certainly discuss alternative arrangements. That client left the next week. Then another. Then another. In the break room, people whispered about leadership reviewing Trent's department. Apparently, there'd been multiple complaints about missed deadlines, poor communication, and deliverables that didn't match what was promised. Trent started working longer hours, arriving early and staying late. His jokes in meetings became more forced. He snapped at team members over minor issues, a typo in an email, a meeting that started 3 minutes late. He was stressed, panicking even, but hiding it with bravado and blame shifting. Meanwhile, North Peak Creative signed its third client, a coffee roaster looking for packaging design. Then a yoga studio needing a website refresh. Then a nonprofit wanting a donor campaign. I was working 70-hour weeks between both jobs, exhausted to my bones, but I'd never felt more alive. And then a familiar name appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "Exploring Creative Partnership." The sender was Evergreen Threads, a sustainable fashion company. Trent's biggest, most lucrative account. The one he'd name-dropped in every meeting for the past year. They wanted to talk to North Peak Creative about switching agencies. I read the email 3 times, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. "Hi North Peak team, we've been working with our current agency for 2 years, but frankly we're not seeing the creativity and responsiveness we need. We came across your work with Bloom Botanicals and were really impressed. Would you be available for a preliminary call to discuss a potential partnership?" The email was signed by their marketing director, someone I'd met exactly once at an Ultravision client event. She didn't recognize North Peak Creative as me. She just knew the work was good. I felt a thrill of power, the kind that comes from being wanted, being valued, being sought after. Trent's crown jewel account was looking for an exit, and they'd come to me. But I also felt the weight of ethics. This wasn't just a conflict of interest, it was Trent's biggest client. Taking them would be a direct, undeniable blow. I drafted 3 different responses. The first was acceptance. The second was a polite referral to a competitor. The third was somewhere in between, offering to consult after they'd officially left Ultravision. I stared at my screen for 20 minutes. Then I deleted all 3 drafts and wrote, "Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm honored you thought of us. Unfortunately, I have a conflict that prevents me from working with you at this time. I'd recommend reaching out to 2 competitor agencies. Wishing you the best with your creative partnerships." I hit send before I could change my mind. That night, I lay awake thinking about that email. I'd done the right thing, the ethical thing. But the seed was planted. Trent's clients were actively looking for alternatives. His empire was crumbling, and I hadn't even done anything to push it. The universe was shifting with or without my help. Trent started noticing something was different about me. I'd stopped flinching when he criticized my work. Stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. Stopped seeking his approval or trying to prove myself. It unnerved him. One afternoon, he appeared at my desk unannounced. "You seem distracted lately. Is everything okay at home?" The question was loaded with implication that I wasn't focused, wasn't committed, wasn't performing. "Everything's fine," I said evenly. "Just busy with projects." "Ultravision projects?" he pressed, his eyes narrowing. "Or other things?" I met his gaze calmly. "My work here is up to date. All deliverables submitted on time. Is there something specific you're concerned about?" He didn't have an answer. Because there wasn't one. My work was flawless, I'd made sure of it. 2 days later, I was called into an HR meeting. Trent was there, arms crossed, expression smug. Felicia from HR looked uncomfortable. "Haley, there's been a concern raised about your commitment to your role here. Trent feels you may not be meeting expectations." I pulled out my laptop and calmly opened a spreadsheet I'd been maintaining, every project I'd completed in the past 6 months, with submission dates, client feedback, and measurable results. Here's a summary of my work. Every single deliverable was submitted on or before the deadline. Client satisfaction scores are above department average. I've mentored 2 junior designers and contributed to 5 successful pitches. If there's a specific expectation I'm not meeting, I'd appreciate clarity on what that is. Felicia reviewed the spreadsheet. Trent's jaw tightened. This all looks fine, Felicia said carefully. Trent, did you have specific examples of concerns? He fumbled for words, then muttered something about attitude and team dynamics. The meeting ended inconclusively. But I'd made my point. He had nothing concrete, and I had everything documented. He thought he'd cornered me. But I was building something he couldn't see and couldn't touch. North Peak Creative was growing faster than I'd anticipated. 5 regular clients, all small businesses with missions I believed in. An eco-friendly cleaning company. A bookstore cafe hybrid. A women's mental health collective. A plant-based meal prep service. I worked late nights and weekends, sacrificing sleep and social life, but it didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like reclaiming something stolen. My portfolio was stronger than anything I'd done at Ultravision. More authentic, more creative, more me. Meanwhile, Trent's department continued hemorrhaging clients. Heritage Hotels officially left for a competitor agency, not me, but someone else. The sustainable lifestyle brand I'd rebranded was unhappy with ongoing support and considering switching. Rumors spread through Ultravision's office. The CEO was unhappy with Trent's performance. Leadership was questioning whether his strategic direction was actually strategic or just expensive chaos. I kept my head down, did my job perfectly, and said nothing to anyone. Because when arrogance meets competence, arrogance always cracks first. The email subject line was ominous, urgent, meeting with HR and management. I was summoned to Felicia's office. Trent sat in the corner, arms crossed, looking simultaneously smug and nervous. Haley, we need to address a serious concern, Felicia began. It's been brought to our attention that you may be operating a business that competes with Ultravision. Is that true? My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice calm. I do freelance design work under a separate LLC. It's not in competition with Ultravision, different client base, different services. She's moonlighting, Trent interjected. Using skills and knowledge she gained here to undercut our business. It's a clear conflict of interest. I pulled out a printed copy of my employment contract, the one I'd reviewed carefully with a lawyer friend before starting North Peak. Section 7.3 of my employment agreement states that freelance work is permitted as long as it doesn't use proprietary Ultravision information, doesn't solicit Ultravision clients, and doesn't interfere with my job performance. I've adhered to all 3 conditions. Felicia reviewed the contract. Her expression softened slightly. And you haven't solicited any of our clients? Never. I've actually declined multiple inquiries from Ultravision clients specifically to avoid conflicts. I slid my laptop across the table, showing the email exchange where I'd turned down Heritage Hotels and Evergreen threads. Felicia read them carefully. Trent's face reddened. This appears to be in compliance with company policy, Felicia said finally. Unless there's evidence of client solicitation or misuse of company resources, there's no violation here. The meeting ended. Trent stormed out without a word. I walked back to my desk, hands shaking with adrenaline and satisfaction. He just handed me my first real weapon, proof that he was threatened, desperate, and grasping at straws. Trent's desperation became visible to everyone. The next client pitch was a disaster. He showed up 15 minutes late, clearly unprepared, and contradicted himself multiple times when asked about timelines. He talked over the client, made promises the team couldn't realistically deliver, and got defensive when questioned about strategy. The client walked. Sent a polite email the next day saying they were exploring other options. The CEO, a normally calm man named Warren, called an emergency department meeting. His voice was measured but sharp. We're losing clients at an unsustainable rate. I need to understand what's happening and how we're fixing it. Trent blamed everyone but himself. The economy. Client expectations. Junior team members. Market transitions. Anything to deflect accountability. Warren listened, his expression unreadable. I'll be reviewing department operations more closely moving forward. That was corporate speak for, you're being watched and your time is running out. Trent started working even longer hours, micromanaging every project, demanding to review every email before it was sent. His control tightened as his world crumbled. And I watched from a distance, doing my job flawlessly, documenting everything, saying nothing. Because he was starting to break the rules, and I was starting to press record. The breaking point came during a closed-door meeting about a campaign deadline we'd missed, we, meaning the team, though the delay was entirely due to Trent's last-minute changes and indecision. He paced the small conference room, his voice rising. "This is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Do you know how this makes me look?" "The client extended the deadline," I said calmly. "They were understanding about." "I don't care if they were understanding," he shouted, slamming a file folder onto the table. Papers scattered. "You're all useless. Every single one of you. I'm the only person in this department who actually understands strategy, and I'm stuck cleaning up your messes." The room went silent. Kayla looked like she might cry. And I sat there, phone in my lap under the table, recording everything. Colorado is a one-party consent state for recordings. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. When Trent finally stormed out, I stopped the recording, forwarded the audio file to my personal email with a timestamp, and saved it in my insurance folder. That night, I drafted a formal HR complaint. 3 pages detailing the verbal abuse, with specific dates, quotes, witnesses, and now audio evidence. I attached documentation of every incident over the past 18 months. I read it twice, then hit send. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. HR moved quietly but deliberately. Over the next week, Felicia conducted private interviews with every member of Trent's team. She asked careful, specific questions about management style, communication, and respect in the workplace. One by one, people told the truth. About belittling, the credit stealing, the blame shifting, the impossible standards, and constant criticism. Haley's complaint wasn't the only one, it was just the most thoroughly documented. But once HR started asking questions, others found the courage to speak up. Kayla, Marcus, even people from other departments who'd worked with Trent and experienced his condescension. The office buzzed with tension. People whispered in corners, stopped talking when Trent walked by. He sensed something was wrong but couldn't pinpoint what. He became increasingly paranoid. Started questioning why meetings were being held without him, why HR kept requesting old files, why people weren't making eye contact anymore. I kept my head down and stayed silent. I'd said what I needed to say in that complaint. Now I let the system work or fail. Either way, I'd done my part. And then one morning, I arrived at work to find Trent's office empty, door closed, lights off. The HR investigation had moved from inquiry to action. Trent saw the North Peak creative campaign 3 weeks later. A local coffee roaster called Ridgeline Coffee had hired me to design their entire brand identity, logo, packaging, signage, social media presence. I'd created something I was genuinely proud of, warm, rustic, authentic. The kind of branding that felt like a story, not a sales pitch. Ridgeline posted the rebrand on Instagram, and it went viral in Denver's small business community. Thousands of likes, hundreds of shares, features in local lifestyle blogs. The aesthetic was unmistakably mine: clean lines, earthy colors, hand-drawn illustrations, authentic storytelling. Anyone who knew my work would recognize it immediately. Trent saw it. I know because Kayla told me he spent an entire afternoon obsessively scrolling through North Peak Creative's website and social media, trying to find proof it was me. He couldn't. I'd been careful: no personal photos, no bio, no identifiable information. Just clean, professional work. But his gut knew. And that knowledge aided him. He started monitoring my computer activity through Ultravision's IT systems. How much time I spent on personal websites, what emails I sent. He interrogated coworkers. Has Haley mentioned any side projects? Do you know what she does on weekends? He became obsessed with proving I was stealing Ultravision's clients, even though I'd never solicited a single one. And in chasing me, in letting his paranoia consume him, he stopped noticing the real threat, his own misconduct catching up with him. Trent's final mistake was born of desperation. He filed another formal complaint with HR, this time claiming I was misusing company resources for personal projects, using Ultravision's design software for North Peak work, accessing client contact lists, stealing intellectual property. It was entirely fabricated. But he was betting that even a baseless accusation would be enough to damage my credibility or get me fired. HR took the complaint seriously. Felicia contacted me for another meeting, this time with IT present. They requested access to my work computer, my email history, and my file access logs. Please, I said calmly. Review everything. They did. Spent 3 days going through my digital footprint at Ultravision. Every file I'd opened, every website I'd visited, every minute of computer activity. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. I'd been meticulously careful to keep North Peak and Ultravision completely separate. But while reviewing Trent's complaint, HR noticed something else: inconsistencies in his expense reports. A client dinner at an upscale steakhouse that none of the listed clients remembered attending. A hotel stay in Aspen labeled business conference during a weekend when no conference was scheduled. Uber rides to and from bars charged as client transportation. Thousands of dollars in potentially fraudulent reimbursements spanning 18 months. HR forwarded their findings to Ultravision's finance department and legal counsel. Trent had handed them the rope. They were starting to pull. The email came on a Thursday afternoon. Trent Lawson has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Department operations will be temporarily overseen by Patricia Chen from the Seattle office. Patricia. My old manager. The one who'd believed in me before Trent ever arrived. The office erupted in whispers. Some people were relieved. Others were nervous about what it meant for their jobs, their projects, their futures. I felt nothing dramatic, no vindication, no celebration. Just a quiet sense of being able to breathe for the first time in 18 months. Kayla stopped by my desk that afternoon. Did you hear? I heard. Do you think it's real? Like, actually serious? I think HR doesn't suspend people unless they have reasons. She lowered her voice. People are saying it's about expense fraud. And maybe other stuff. Management stuff. I nodded but didn't elaborate. My complaint was confidential. Whatever HR found beyond that was on Trent, not me. That night I went home, made dinner, and worked on a new North Peak project, a rebrand for a women's mental health collective. No drama, no stress, just good work. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up anxious about the next day. 1 week after Trent's suspension, my phone rang. Unknown number, Denver area code. Hello. Hi, is this North Peak Creative? This is Simone from Evergreen Threads. My stomach dropped. The sustainable fashion company. Trent's biggest account. We reached out a few months ago, she continued, but you mentioned a conflict. I'm calling to see if that's still the case. We've officially ended our relationship with our previous agency, so there shouldn't be any overlap now. I was silent for a moment, processing. They'd left Ultravision. Officially. Completely. Can I ask what happened with your previous agency? Simone sighed. Poor communication, missed deadlines, lack of creative vision. And, honestly, some concerning behavior from their leadership. We decided it was time for a fresh start. I'd be happy to discuss a partnership, I said carefully. Can we schedule a call for early next week? Perfect. Looking forward to it. I hung up and stared at my phone. This was it, the moment where North Peak Creative went from side hustle to legitimate competitor. Trent's crown jewel account, the one he'd bragged about incessantly, wanted to work with me. The irony was poetic. His nightmare had just been born, and it had my name on it. The investigation results came down on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after Trent's suspension. HR called a department meeting, no advance notice, just a Slack message. All marketing staff, main conference room, 4 p.m. We filed in quietly, tension thick in the air. Felicia stood at the front with Warren, the CEO, and someone from legal. Warren spoke first. I want to address the recent changes in department leadership. After a thorough internal review, we've determined that Trent Lawson's employment with Ultravision Media is terminated, effective immediately, for cause. The room was silent. Someone exhaled audibly. The investigation uncovered multiple violations of company policy, including expense fraud, workplace harassment, and misrepresentation of employee contributions. We take these matters extremely seriously, and we apologize to anyone who is affected by this behavior. He continued talking about new leadership and rebuilding trust, but I stopped listening. It was over. Truly, finally over. I wasn't even present for Trent's exit. He'd been escorted out earlier that day while I was working from home. By the time I heard, his desk was already cleared, his access badges deactivated, his email account disabled. I didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. Didn't feel the vindication I thought I might. I just felt tired. And free. That evening, I closed my laptop, looked around my apartment, and exhaled slowly. I didn't need to watch him fall. I just needed to stop catching him. 3 months after Trent's termination, Evergreen Threads rebrand launched. It was everything I'd hoped for: authentic, beautiful, story-driven. Their social media engagement tripled. Their website traffic increased by 200%. They signed distribution deals with 3 major retailers. They were thrilled. And they told everyone. Word spread through Denver's business community. North Peak Creative was the agency to watch. The one that actually listened, actually delivered, actually cared about more than just billable hours. More clients reached out. A local brewery. A nonprofit focused on youth literacy. A sustainable home goods company. And then I got an email that made me laugh out loud. Another Ultravision client, a wellness brand called Thrive Collective, had reached out. They'd been with Ultravision for 4 years, but were exploring other options after some concerning changes in service quality. They didn't know I was the reason for those changes. They just knew the work had gotten worse after I left Trent's orbit. I took them on. Did a complete brand refresh that they called transformative. Then another former Ultravision client reached out. Then another. Not because I'd poached them. Not because I'd badmouthed Ultravision. But because the work spoke for itself, and people wanted to work with someone who valued them. 2 months later, Ultravision's interim department head called me. "Haley, I know you moved on, but we'd love to bring you back as senior creative strategist. Significant raise, equity stake, flexible schedule. We messed up, and we want to make it right." I appreciated the offer. I really did. But I'd already built something better. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "I'm honored you thought of me. But I've moved on in a direction that feels right. I wish you all the best." There was a pause. "I understand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for what happened with Trent." "You deserved better." "I did," I agreed. "And now I have it." I hung up feeling nothing but peace. I'd already built something that didn't need his permission, his approval, or his validation. 6 months after leaving Ultravision, I signed a lease on a small studio space in Denver's Rhino Arts District. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, natural light pouring in like hope. I painted one wall sage green, filled the space with plants, and hung my favorite client work on the walls. North Peak Creative had outgrown my apartment. Now it needed a real home. I hired 2 people. The first was Kayla, the junior designer who'd stayed quiet during Trent's reign of terror, but had finally found her voice. She'd quit Ultravision a month after Trent's termination, burned out and demoralized. "I want to work somewhere that doesn't make me dread Monday mornings," she said during her interview. "That's exactly what we're building," I told her. The second hire was Marcus, the guy who'd gotten promoted over me, the one whose success had highlighted my own stagnation. He'd quit Ultravision out of guilt and respect for me, sent me a long apology email about not speaking up when he should have. "I knew what was happening was wrong," he wrote. "I was just too scared to say anything. I'm sorry." I hired him not despite that apology, but because of it. Because he'd learned, grown, and was willing to do better. On our first day in the new space, the 3 of us stood in the empty studio with coffee and donuts from the bakery downstairs. "Here's to building something that doesn't break people," I said, raising my paper cup. They clinked their cups against mine. Kayla's eyes were shining. Marcus looked lighter than I'd ever seen him. We spent that day setting up desks, hanging art, arguing about the best placement for the couch we'd found at a vintage shop. It felt less like work and more like coming home to a place I'd built with my own hands. Sometimes success doesn't roar. It just replaces what broke you, one intentional decision at a time. 1 year after that humiliating conference room meeting, I'm sitting in my sun-filled studio, reviewing a proposal for a national sustainable fashion brand, not Evergreen Threads, but someone bigger. They found me through word of mouth, through the work, through the reputation North Peak Creative has built. My team has grown to 12 people. We've worked with 47 clients. We've turned down projects that didn't align with our values. We've built something that prioritizes people over profit, creativity over ego, collaboration over competition. I still see Trent occasionally on LinkedIn, where his profile shows he's freelancing as an independent brand consultant. His network has shrunk. His updates are infrequent and vague. He's working with small clients, struggling to rebuild credibility in an industry that quietly blacklisted him. I feel no satisfaction seeing his decline. No vindication, no schadenfreude. Just a quiet gratitude that I'm no longer in his orbit, no longer defined by his perception of my worth. Because here's what I've learned. People like Trent thrive in systems that protect them, hierarchies where power matters more than competence, where being loud matters more than being right. But those systems are fragile. They collapse under the weight of their own dysfunction eventually. And when they do, the people who are building something real, something based on actual skill, actual integrity, actual care, are still standing. I didn't beat Trent at his game. I refused to play it at all. I built a new game with new rules, where creativity matters more than politics, where people are valued for their contributions rather than their ability to self-promote, where sweetheart is never used to diminish someone's professional worth. My phone buzzes. It's Kayla, sending a photo of a finished brand guide for our newest client, a women's outdoor gear company. The work is stunning. Creative, purposeful, exactly what the client envisioned. This is the best thing I've ever designed, her text says. Thank you for giving me space to do this. I smile and type back, you did this. I just stopped getting in your way. That's the difference, I think. Trent saw leadership as control, as taking credit, as making himself look good at others' expense. I see it as creating space for people to do their best work, then getting out of their way. I close my laptop and look around my studio. Afternoon light streams through the windows. My team is laughing about something in the kitchen area. Client work is pinned to the walls, evidence of the problems we've solved, the stories we've told, the businesses we've helped build. This is what winning looks like. Not destruction, not revenge, not watching someone else fail. Just building something good, something sustainable, something that treats people like they matter. I think back to that conference room, to Trent's smirk, to the word sweetheart that broke something inside me. At the time, it felt like the end of everything. It was actually the beginning. Because sometimes the worst moments aren't endings, they're catalysts. They're the moments that force you to stop waiting for permission, stop seeking validation from people who are never going to give it, and start building the life you deserve on your own terms. Trent thought my ideas were worthless. Though I was lucky to even have a job. Thought he could diminish me into invisibility. Now he can't afford my work. Can't access the clients who sought me out. Can't replicate the reputation I've built through actual competence rather than borrowed authority. I didn't beat him at his game. I built a new one and won. My phone rings. Another potential client, another opportunity, another chance to do work that matters with people who value it. I answer with a smile. This is Haley Brooks with North Peak Creative. How can I help you? And I mean it. Because helping people tell their stories, build their brands, find their voices, that's not just what I do anymore. It's who I've become. The woman who refused to stay small in spaces designed to diminish her. The woman who walked away from toxicity and built something better. The woman who learned that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. Building a life so full, so purposeful, so authentically yours that the people who tried to break you become irrelevant. That's freedom. That's victory. That's exactly where I am.